All right. But you don't have to start from scratch every time. I don't start from scratch because this is not, like I was saying, this is not my expertise. I don't like to start from scratch. I usually will run tools in ArcMap and copy the Python script over to the Python code itself. So we can just run a clip tool. What do we want to clip? We'll clip environmentally sensitive areas by the county. This is the wrong file. Where do you guys think I saved it? Here, in here. Nope, not that one. All right, we're just gonna put it in here for now. Oh, there it is. Perfect. So we're gonna save it as, this is our ESA clip, and go ahead and run that. Hopefully it won't take too long, but we can run our tool and then go over to our geoprocessing as it's running and go over down to results. You can see that clip got added. And in our geoprocessing window, we can right click on the clip, and there's this option here, copy as Python snippet. So if we click on that, we could go into our window in ArcMap and copy and see that whole code. Notice I didn't type any of this out. You don't have to type everything. Or we can go over to our, let's just say, under our clip tool, and we can paste it, oops, let's go back over here, paste it into our code itself. So we have our input features, the output features, or the clip feature itself, the output feature class where we're saving it, etc. So you could do it this way. It still needs a little bit of cleaning up. You can see that it brings with it some details. It brings some comments with it from ArcMap. The other thing you can do, which is wonderful, is you can copy your entire model. So once you have your model cooking and working the way you want it to, you can come over to your model itself, go to the edit option, model, export to Python script, and then we can save it as a Python script. And these .py files will open in any of your IDEs. And then we can go back over to Python. This is our Python shell, and we can open up that Python. Where did I say this? This is the, I did this, it's in here, I think. Yeah, there it is. So we can open up that Python script and you'll see how it imports. So it has some of these things that we're familiar with. It's got a bunch of comments up top. It's got the import code telling it, or the import command saying import all of our ArcGIS tools. It has all these script arguments that we built in our parameters, which I'll talk about in a second. Excuse me, it has our variables, and then it has our tools themselves. So clip, buffer, clip, buffer. If we were just to run, well, we'll just run it. If we were to run this, we're gonna start to see some errors pop up, but part of the fun and the stuff that will drive you crazy is fixing those errors. So you can see that if I just copied this right out of ArcMap, I think, yay, I'm done. And this will happen in your lab tonight. You're gonna think like, oh, I'm done, but you're not. I never get it to run exactly out of ArcMap. And a lot of that has to do with the error. So a couple things. It's telling us that, it's telling us one, the lines or the tools that had problems. So the clip analysis tool, so just our first tool, that's always great when your first one fails. It's telling you that you have an execution error, so the parameters are not valid. We have an issue with our input features. So this parks data set, it doesn't understand where that is. In our clip feature data set, it doesn't understand what the San Diego County is. So it didn't do anything. It stopped right away before it could get started. It tried, but it failed. So what it's telling us is that these variables are a problem, because you can see, well, one of the reasons is, one, do you notice all of our variables that we're using in our analysis and our tools? So you can see our parks variable here in our clip analysis tool, our input, and then the cookie cutter of the county. These are all just defined as defined as these strings like parks, San Diego County, but it doesn't tell, the code doesn't know where, the script doesn't know where to get that data. So things like the San Diego parks, it has a little bit more detail in terms of the file path, but it doesn't have everything for a lot of these tools. So what you have to do with a lot of times is, the biggest error you're gonna have at the start is your file path names. So I'm gonna go over to the one that I actually fixed, this one. Yeah, so I pulled this up before class so I could actually start fixing it. But this is just that site suitability example. I changed some of the comments up top, and I started working through the errors. So you can see that that import is still here, but like I talked about, setting that workspace where everything I'm saving to, setting overwrites so I don't have to rename files. I'm gonna skip the arguments for a second. And I started messing with my local variables. The first thing that I always do, and the reason I always do this, and I encourage you to do this, is to set a data path for where all your data are. Is because it's a lot easier to edit it once than to edit it every time you see the long file names in your model. So if we just set a data path saying all of our data are saved in this one file, that assumes all your data are saved in one file. We can set that data path, and it will always tell it to go back and look for the data there. I also changed around some of the variables. So it was telling me, the error said it didn't know where this what this parks data was. I had no idea what that was. What was that error? Data set parks does not exist or is not supported. So all I did was change my variables around a little bit by using the input for parks, setting it equal to the data path, and then you just add on the 2 more backslashes and that parks file. So this is sort of that standard language in a lot of ArcGIS variables, is calling the data path, then adding on the 2 backslashes or however else you're defining the file path, and then the file name itself. You'll also notice capitalization, underscores, spacing has to be exact. So very important that if it's parks in my file path with all capital letters, it has to be parks in my code itself. If you're wondering, how do I get the file path without actually having to copy it out or type it out, you can go into our catalog. I can click on my geodatabase. I can go to that parks layer and click right up here. And this is showing me that file path. So all I did was copy and paste it in. You can just copy and paste it in if you want to, and add the quotes around the end, and add in those extra backslashes if you wanted to do it that way. So you don't have to write out the full data path either. A lot of this is just copying, pasting, and figuring out where things are. So I did that for all of my variables. I gave, or I should say all of the data layers, I made them all into variables so they'd be easier to edit and easier to find in my model. So instead of having to make sure I always had parks typed in capital letters, I just have it called the input of parks. So we can, so then what I did was well, let's just do this. I fixed some other things. We're gonna run this real quick so you can see the error that pops up. I edited all these other tools. So I fixed that clip tool, and I'm gonna show you how I fixed all the tools in a second once you get this error, once the error pops up. So I had it, my first print statement was tell me, for some reason, the input of parks, what field that was, or what file that was. My next print statement should be that the first Parks clip was successful. Oh, this one failed. That's not the one I was expecting to fail. This is fun. This output already exists. So that's a good learning thing. I set at the top, I set the overwrite the environment, right? So any file I create in my code is supposed to automatically rewrite over the existing file, unless that file already exists. So I already had a Parks 1 mile somewhere else. So I have to rename my output of my buffer here to something else.
I remember when they were that much.
Let me just
when
mute.
it was just like nothingness on the board and you had to look at the screen to do it.
Yeah.
There we go. So I will just rename what that output is going to be, and I should not get that error anymore, but we'll see. Let's see. So I'll see that I should see these two okays. Oh, I should have put a number at the end of that. All right, so it's telling me I got the files loaded correctly, successfully. Clip Park should be next. Maybe. And then hopefully we'll buffer the parks. I think it failed a lot faster last time, so that's good. This is riveting. Well, while that's running, I can talk about kind of how I started fixing these tools. Let me make this a little bit smaller. So the last tool we do have to fix is the second buffer tool. So when you just, actually, let's go back over this code. When you just pull the code in, it leaves all of the defaults. When you just pull the Python snippet in, it leaves all of the default variables. So in this instance, you can see the SD county __2_. This is an intermediate variable that was created in the model. This isn't something that was saved. It's not an entirely new file. It's just something that was created in that model. So it doesn't actually exist. So instead of having it here, we can what I started doing was editing out the default variables and editing in my new variables. So you can see the parks here references the input variable. This is our clip feature that cookie cutter. This is what the output was supposed to be. And you can see here that I changed that to be my input variable, changed to the in parks instead of parks. My clip variable or the cookie cutter is just county. And then I have my new output variable here. Let's see if this, so I went and did that for all of them by renaming variables, renaming outputs, giving them a new home and a new name. This parks buffer distance, this is referencing our parameters that we set before. So it's telling it, it's either in this parameter argument, it's either gonna be the half-mile default, or I have to change it to a number. So I just left it as the default for now. Let's see where that other, how we're doing over here. Perfect. So you can see that it buffered the parks and it clipped the ESAs, and now we're on to the buffer for the ESA, which failed because, again, this is what I was just talking about. I still have it set up as the default that it came over with. So you'll be working through this in your lab, but for the input, we want our environmentally sensitive areas, which doesn't exist. And I'm sorry, the input for the buffer, we want the output of our ESA here, our output from our clip analysis. So we can pull this output and just copy and paste it in, rename the input. We want to buffer our clipped ESAs by, we'll give it a new name. Did I give it a new name? No, we need a buffer. So we'll add in a new variable. And then we can copy and paste this in. We'll leave and then we can leave all our other settings alone. I'll add in that print statement. And we'll save. So all I did was hopefully, I know it's a bit confusing when you're trying to learn what is going on, but all I'm really doing is copying and pasting and just editing. So I didn't have to rewrite this whole line of buffer script. I just had to change the input variable and the output variable names. So it's not, you can start from the completely blank scripts if you want to, but that's incredibly daunting and nobody likes to do that, especially when you can copy and paste things. So we're seeing the shell work through. So we've got the clips, the buffer, let's see, the clips, the parks have been clipped. We'll buffer the parks in a second. We know these first three works, they already work, they just take a while. We'll see if I fixed it correctly. Just a little bit of patience. That's always the fun part, waiting to see if it actually works. We know these two work, so. All right, so you can see it buffered the parks. We're slowly working our way through. Clipped the ESAs, one more, fingers crossed. Drum roll. So close. All right, and we did it. So we got all of our output statements. So it worked correctly. And then we can go back into our file geodatabase and refresh. And we'll see that we have our new values added. So what did we call them? That's something to remember. So the ESA buffer, we can look for that one. Get out of here. This is one of the new ones we created. So we can drag that in. And we can see that it's been added to our map. So these things that you're creating in Python, they're automatically creating and adding into your geodatabase. They are just, will not display until you add them in themselves. So you won't necessarily see it populate right away unless you ask it to. So let me stop recording real quick.